Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for coming. We have one more speaker on the way. They're going to come up as they get here, but I wanted to get underway, respect all of your time. For those I haven't met yet, my name is Connor Reed. Oh, there we go. Is that better? All right. Okay, there we go. Oh, now that's really loud. I'm off to a great start. Are we good now? Okay. For those I haven't met yet, my name is Connor Reed. I'm your town administrator as of this February. Really glad to be here tonight. We're going to be providing you with an update on the Fire Station 1 project, explaining what's going to be in front of you as voters next Monday at the annual town meeting. Joining me tonight are members of the town's fire department leadership, as well as the citizen-led FS1 steering committee. We appreciate all your time and your engagement for this important project. So tonight, our goal tonight is to lay out where we've been, where we are today, why that matters for the fire department and for Westwood, and where we are asking the community to take us with an affirmative vote for Article 22, Monday town meeting. We'll briefly review the history of the FS1 project, and then we'll explain the new approach to the FS1 project that came from community feedback following its failure last year. Finally, we'll outline the scope of the request that's going before you Monday night, which is limited to feasibility and schematic design. Following the presentation tonight, the panel up here will be available to take questions from residents at this microphone. This is being filmed by Westwood Media Center, so if you could give your name and address for the record, that would be appreciated. And if anybody would like, after the panel, members of the fire department are on hand if you would like to get a tour of the station if you have not yet seen all of it for yourself. They are here and can walk you through it. So again, really appreciate all of you coming out tonight. And we're going to kick this off with Assistant Fire Chief Colin McCarthy explaining kind of the why behind this project. Why is FS1 important, and why should that matter to you as residents of this community? So, Assistant Chief.
Thank you. How are you? Thank you very much for coming tonight. I just want to kind of summarize how we got here as far as this station, and just point out the main deficiencies of the station as they sit. Currently, reaching back to 2013, it was identified that this floor that you're currently sitting on was structurally unsafe to support the weight of the current fire apparatus that we keep here. Engine 5 and Ladder 1 in particular are more of the heavier apparatus, upwards of 70,000 pounds. Back in 2013, you can see a difference in color between the front of the building and the back of the building. They refinished this floor and added support underneath. They added shoring under the two bays in the middle of this building just this past winter. So since that time, the floor was monitored by an engineering firm. They would come in on a quarterly basis and say, yep, you're good to go, you're good to go. Over this past winter, we noticed a significant deterioration in the floor to the point we had to call them back in, at which point they said, we don't feel safe that this floor is able to support the weight of your trucks any longer. So that's when we made the decision to come off of this floor. That's how it relates to the floor. But as it goes with a couple other things I would like to point out. Nowadays in more modern fire stations, you have a little bit more of separation. You have a contaminated area of your building, you have a decontamination area in your building, and then you have your living quarters. Right now, as you can see, this door right here to my right is our living quarters. That's our kitchen and our living room on a day-to-day basis. And this is our contaminated area. So there's really no separation between the two. In addition to that, you notice we have our gear in kind of what you would consider a decontaminated state. But it's still, as it sits there, subject to diesel exhaust coming off the trucks as we pull in and out of here when we were occupying this space. What ideally we're looking for is to create a space where you come back in to what we'll call a hot zone as a contaminated area, go through a decontamination process and into our clean living space. So that's what we're looking to go towards, but we're not there yet in this station. In addition to that, basic codes, accessibility requirements that we don't have in this building. There's no elevator here. There's no bathroom on the bottom floor where my office is, as well as some of the other administrative staff are. And as Connor pointed out, I'll be happy to give you a tour, or some of our fellow firefighters will be happy to give you a tour after this if you would like. ADA compliance, things like that that you would look for in a new building today. We don't have that here. The workforce has actually changed for us over the years, sorry, as trucks drive by. Over the past 15 to 20 years, the workforce has kind of drastically changed for us. We have more females on the department now. And when this station was designed, we didn't have that separation. We didn't have an area for female employees and male employees. It was all basically built for an all-male department. In addition to that, we've also changed in size. Our department has grown, and we're trending in that direction. As the community grows, we try to kind of match that. So the current building is kind of small for our current staffing model. A couple last things I want to point out is, over the years, as you can see, what we're really trying to look to stop is the Band-Aid approach, where we're putting good money into a building that's failing and really isn't meeting the needs, the programmatic needs or the personal needs of the fire department. Addressing all of these challenges is what we're really looking to do as it relates to the safety and well-being of our fire service today. So that's a little bit of history as to how we got to where we are with this building and where we're looking to go forward, and I will turn it over back to Connor from there. I'll be happy to answer any questions as the night goes on. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. So that is not easy to read from your seats, but I'm going to take the liberty of assuming that if you're here tonight, you've probably been pretty engaged with this process. You care about the town. You have some familiarity with the FS1 project. Just want to quickly recap. Colin referenced it. More than a decade ago now, there was a study performed on the needs of the public safety facilities in Westwood. Voters of this community approved building a new police station and a new fire station in Islington. Because of a lot of the really great growth and commercial growth that you had going on as a community at that time, you were able to do that without a tax increase, so to speak, without having to go to a debt exclusion and raise your taxes specifically for a project. That's an amazing thing to be able to do, but it is not necessarily a common thing that you could do. And the construction environment has changed dramatically in those 13 years, where the cost of borrowing is higher, the cost of labor is higher, the cost of supplies is higher, and the growth is not necessarily where it was when University Station was being built. So you have those kind of challenges pulling against you. But so you had that study, the community approved new police, new fire, as Colin referenced. It was not unknown that this station had some serious challenges, and there was what was a temporary stopgap of shoring and holding the floor up from underneath, which it was never meant to be a permanent fix, and that has now outrun its life. So in 2022, the town began an operational and feasibility study for FS1. Those studies were completed and presented in 2023. The year after, in 2024, voters at town meeting approved funding for the design and bidding documents for a new FS1 at this site, and a working group of staff was formed to steer that process. The following year, in 2025, at your town meeting, voters approved construction funding, but because of the scale of the project, that construction funding was tied to a debt exclusion, which then went on to fail twice, once in June and in September. The town held a community forum in the fall, and the select board, partially in response to the feedback from the citizens at that forum, established a citizen-led steering committee, the FS1 steering committee, in November. And that group of residents has met dozens of times throughout the winter. They are continuing to meet. They've been having listening sessions. They've really been doing great work. And in early 2026, consistent with what they were asked to do by the board, they identified 3 potential sites that they believe best meet operational criteria for the fire department, that they recommended go deeper, go down the field for further study. The Finance and Warrant Commission unanimously recommended that on Monday night, you approve Article 22, which would do exactly that. It would fund feasibility and schematic design to take the new approach to FS1 to its endpoint of getting a project for the community to consider. I'm going to turn it over to those residents who are on the steering committee just to talk a little bit about their process and what led them here. So Ford Spalding is the chair of that committee. I'd like to invite Ford up to say a few words.
Thank you, Connor. Welcome, everybody. It's good to see you, and I've seen some of you as we've gone down the path trying to communicate as much as we can. You know, I'm just going to repeat a few things. One, what we have heard is what didn't go through? Too big and too expensive. Lack of resident participation in the process. Only one option was presented and really looked at. And finally, lack of communication. We've tried to answer those questions. On the committee, I just want to name them. Myself, I am chair. Jody Petroselli, who you'll hear from in a minute, is vice chair. We have Ken Ayers, Peter Bean, Sarah Cantley, John Cummings, Harry Davis, Paul DeLay, and Nancy James was appointed to the committee. The deliverables that the selectmen asked us to bring back to them by March 1, we did it before March 1, was a written summary of programmatic requirements and best practices for the fire department. A matrix scorecard of at least 8 short-term and long-term options. These were the options that were discussed at a listening session by the Board of Selectmen, I believe on October 5 of last year. Identify which options to move forward. The FS1 Steering Committee, and I just want to talk a little bit about the communications that we had. On May 4, we will have had 15 public meetings, all of which have been recorded and are on the website for your listening enjoyment or watching enjoyment. We have had up to six meetings along with the Board of Selectmen, community forums like this. We presented committee updates, we presented committee updates at Board of Selectmen's meeting. I attended every Board of Selectmen's meeting and gave a report. We answer all emails and comments submitted to the FS1 Steering Committee. So if you write, within about 24 hours, you'll get an answer from me. And some people said, well, why is he just answering? He isn't just answering. Everything goes back to the committee, and they can see what's there. We wrote to all abutters and others who lived in areas that were adjacent to the properties we looked at, informing them of what we were doing and encouraging them to participate in our process. We've engaged, obviously, in one-on-one conversations. We continue to post on Facebook, Instagram, X, Westwood Minute, Westwood Hometown Weekly, Westwood Town Government, and we also mailed out a postcard to all of you about the town meeting. On the Westwood Town website, FS1, and I know sometimes it's hard to navigate a town website. It's not just Westwood, it's others. But if you go there, you will see all previous and written reports that you can read, the site matrix that we completed. Not really completed. We're waiting for some of the work that's going to be done so we can complete it, is on there. Listing of programmatic requirements and best practices on there. Frequently asked questions. There's an FAQ, and every time you send something or contact one of us or anyone in the town hall with a question, it goes into our FAQ, so you can see that. That's all there for your interest. So I invite you to go to the website as much as possible. The 3 sites, as you well know, is 637 High Street. That's right here. We incidentally have not decided on a site. The Deerfield School site and the 5.1 acres of land, we call it behind Starbucks. And in order to determine the final site, we must have a yes vote on May 4th. Approval at the town meeting to spend $325,000 for a professional feasibility study and schematic design rendering of the 3 sites is going to allow us to then finish the matrix and say, here is the best site that meets the needs of the fire department and the town of Westwood. Is it finally working better? A second requirement, the second requirement that we're looking at is the site must have direct access to High Street. Obviously, we here have direct access to High Street. We do not at the other 2. In order for them to really qualify and be a site that's workable, we need that direct access. And the third is cost. Cost is not only for a new building, it is also involves demolition of this building, potential temporary relocation for the fire department while this building is being worked on, potential purchase of land so we can gain access to High Street, and now a temporary structure. All this is adding to the cost. So costs also can only be determined once we find a site that we know what kind of a building we can build. And there's the different types of structures that can be done there. So the goal is to come back to the special town meeting in fall. That's our ideal. We'll spend the summer working. We'll come back to a special town meeting in the fall where we will have plans to build a building and a cost for you to see. Thank you. Jody. Jody is vice chair, and she has the next assignment.
Good evening. Is this on? Can you hear me? I'm going to be brief. I'm going to try not to repeat a lot of what I think all of you have already heard, but I was asked to talk a little bit about why we chose these 3 sites, how we got to this, why we're doing feasibility on 3 locations. You know, the first answer to that is one of the biggest criticisms that we heard going into this process is that no other alternatives were presented the last time around. That by the time the project got to the part where the community was being involved, it was, this is where we're doing it, this is what it's going to look like, please come and listen to what we've already decided to do. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to include all of you in the community in the process of getting to that decision, and that's exactly what we're trying to do. Ford identified the 3 sites that we are asking that you fund us at the town meeting to do further feasibility. These are the 3 most likely viable sites that we were able to determine based on all of the information that we looked at. And we looked at everything that was available to us. We looked at all of the previous sites that the town had considered. We walked all of those sites. We looked at several different sites that weren't part of those previous considerations, that were either proposed by citizens that owned property that they thought might be viable and they were interested in talking to the town about using, or just random citizens that said, hey, what about this location? Couldn't you use this? I've lived in the town for a while. I'm a builder in the town. This looks viable. We looked at all of them. Everyone except for these 3, we were confident in our ability to eliminate them based on what we knew and not needing any further feasibility. It was either because the location was geographically outside of the area that we need the firehouse to be. One of the things that's on the website that you can look at, you can see, is there's a hot zone map, and it very clearly explains the geographical location off of 109 between this point and that point that this fire station needs to be and why it needs to be there so that the town can continue to meet the response times that they need. So some of the locations were out of that. Some of the locations, just the land didn't work. Either it was long and narrow and it didn't have the frontage on 109 that we needed. It just wasn't big enough. Some of the locations would have required the town to take land from private people that didn't want to sell their land, and the town doesn't have the appetite to forcibly take land from private citizens if they don't have to at this point in time. So we looked at all of that, and these are the 3 locations that are possible. We can't tell you, and we don't know enough right now, to say which one is best. That depends on a lot of things that we just don't know yet. And that's what this money is for. This money is for feasibility so that we can delve a little deeper into these locations and answer more of your questions. What would the access to 109 look like at Deerfield and Starbucks? Where would it be? How complicated would it be to put there? What would a new fire station at this location look like? Because if we were going to recommend this location stay as the location for the fire station, it would be a different build. Nobody is ever going to come back to that design that we've already looked at a bunch of times and said, let's look at this a 3rd time. That's not happening. So it would look differently. we have to look at the land. Where are the wetlands? How do we get utilities there? How would it affect the neighborhoods? How would it affect traffic? How would it look to the neighbors? So many things that go into making a final recommendation that we just don't have the data to do yet. That's what this feasibility money is for. It's to give us the additional data points that we don't yet have so that we can come back to all of you in the future and say, this is the location we've chosen, this is a schematic design of what the fire station would look like, and this is why we chose that as opposed to the other two. And we will continue to do that process. If we get a new idea, if someone proposes a location that we haven't yet considered, we will look at that. The feasibility money will allow us to be used at different locations that haven't been considered yet. None of these locations are perfect. If there was a simple answer, we wouldn't need to do any of this. Every location has a pro and a con. So it's not an easy decision. There's no clear-cut winner. And we just need more data and more information to be able to make a recommendation that we feel comfortable with, that we can recommend to you and then talk to you about and explain why we recommended it. The only other thing I'd like to say, and I think Connor's going to go in and tell you more about, well, what is feasibility? What is this money going to be used for? What are the types of things that are going to be done? We've been asked multiple times, well, hasn't this been done already? No. The two locations, Deerfield and the Starbucks location, have never had any feasibility done on it. There has never been any money spent. The stuff that we are looking to do has never been done before. Yes, there has been some feasibility done here at this site. Obviously, that was needed to be done in order to come up with the last design. And to the extent that that can be reused, we will reuse it. We are not going to redo something that has already been done. We are not going to spend money to redo something that has already been done unless we need different information or new information that wasn't part of that. Obviously, a new design would cost a little bit of money, but we're not going to repeat anything that's already been done. And if we do feasibility of these three locations and we choose one of them, that doesn't mean that the money spent on the other two locations is wasted. This is all town-owned land. This data that we get from this feasibility is usable by the town no matter what they use that land for in the future. So if we do feasibility at Deerfield and Starbucks and then decide not to use that for the fire station, that is valuable data that has value to the town when they decide what they're going to do with that land next, as opposed to putting a fire station there. So we're making this request of the town. We think it's money well spent. We think it's valuable information that we're going to need in order for us to make the type of recommendation that you all have asked. You know, we've gotten the message very clear. Keep us informed. Let us know what you're doing. Let us know why you're doing it. We're trying very hard to do that, and this is a necessary next step in order for us to be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. I think I might have you present instead of me, because I've covered most of what I had in the next few slides. So I'm not going to read everything that's on the screen. What's in front of you is actually language from the warrant article. It's Article 22, Monday night. You should have by now received a Finance Committee and warrant book that is mailed to all residents in Westwood. This is in there in detail. And so again, really the goal here is to take this process further and get us to where we want to be with a project that the community can get behind. So to talk just a little bit, a lot of this has been touched on, but what is feasibility? You could summarize everything that's on that screen much more simply by just saying feasibility is a process of getting to the right building at the right site for the right price. Sorry. Okay. And as Jody and Ford touched on, the town recognizes that, you know, technical proficiency is great, but that's kind of the baseline. So right building, right site, right price sounds nice, but we recognize that we need to do that in a way that is public, that you as residents feel like you can follow along to the extent you want to. Not all 16,000 residents are going to want to go to every single one of these meetings, and that's okay. But if you are going to be asked for a potential tax increase at the end of a process, you deserve to be able to follow along when you choose and to participate and share how you feel to try to guide that process, because this is your town. And so that's really what the feasibility component would do. The article is not just feasibility, it's feasibility and schematic design. This is a similar path that usually school projects follow under the MSBA framework for school replacements, where we would do the feasibility that looks at the programming, the right building, site, and price. Schematic design funding will give us what we need with the design team to pull together a project scope and budget, which basically just means we will know enough that they won't be final designs, right? These are not things you could put on the market and bid for a contractor immediately, but it's enough information that you as voters and taxpayers have a high degree of confidence in what that project cost is, what the project timeline is, and what the potential tax impacts would be to you. It also includes important programmatic things for the fire department, including the layout of the building, how the apparatus move in and out of it, how it operates day to day. But really what this one article does is it gets you to an endpoint where we know enough without fully funding multiple million in design development. We know enough that hopefully we're at a place where the community feels good about the project and is ready to approve it. So we've talked about what feasibility and schematic design is. It's equally important to talk about what it's not. Approving Article 22 Monday night does not pick a final site. It gives your residents and neighbors on the steering committee and on the select board the tools that they need to do so, and to do so in a data-driven, inclusive, and transparent way. But it is not a fait accompli. We've heard from residents, abutters of some of the sites, people who understandably have strong feelings about where the project ought to ultimately land. Some feel it should be here. Some feel maybe behind Starbucks. Whether or not one of those three sites is your preferred site is not decided or preordained by virtue of funding Article 22. If Article 22 is funded, all of the work after that that's going to really dig into the details so that we can make the best choice we can as a community about which of those sites is best will be at public meetings that you can participate in and help shape that decision. Article 22 does not pick a final design. It was alluded to that one of the sites that's included in Article 22 is this one. And that's kind of a tricky balance, because obviously the former FS1 project was here, and that was rejected. We would not be going through this to then take the exact same design and say, meet the new project, it's the old project. I would certainly not do that, because I like to be employed. So that's not what you will see if it does end up here. And finally, it doesn't include construction funding. That would still require coming back to you as voters for approval at a town meeting and a town-wide ballot. But in order to even get there, we need to get Article 22 approved. My thunder on this was stolen, but yes, the town did do a feasibility study for this process. Jody kind of talked through a lot of this already, but the reality is really what's in that blue box, I think, is what's most important, which is the new approach that Westwood is taking here is not to say that the technical design or the technical process somehow was deficient. It was a perfectly acceptable design, but it was clearly not acceptable to you as the folks who have the final say on the cost and its construction. And so it's not enough for us to have a technically sufficient process and design product. We need you, and we need you to come along the process with us, and we need to earn your trust. And that's why the Citizen Committee has been doing such invaluable work. That's why we're having well-advertised public forums like this before we're even making those decisions, because we want to earn the trust that we need from you before we come back with a third try on this process. We're also balancing the reality that one of the most common concerns cited by residents was that the project last time was costly. The longer that we take to restart this process and get it right, the more construction costs rise with the cost of doing business throughout the economy. And so we are balancing the citizen-led process, the inclusive process, while trying to be very efficient and intentional with the time that we are spending. Following the FS1 Steering Committee's recommendations in February, as Ford noted ahead of ahead of schedule, we engaged Weston and Sampson to come in and start doing pre-feasibility site work at Deerfield and behind Starbucks to get a head start on looking at the site geometry, looking at things like wetlands, site access, zoning, and buildability concerns. This is going to be a really valuable baseline that if voters entrust us with this funding Monday night, we can really hit the ground running and make the best use of this time. And as Jody mentioned, even for the 2 sites, if this all goes swimmingly and we pick a site, project is approved, that data is really good for you as residents to have about it's your land, it's your property. And at some point in the future, when folks are having a discussion about, gee, what would we really love to see at the site, it'll be very helpful to have all of that work completed already. We have also this spring put the project management services out for competitive rebidding. We interviewed the finalist firms for that publicly. That was filmed by Westwood Media Center. And we selected PMA Consultants as a new project management firm to come in and work on the FS1 project, pending town meeting appropriation. They're here with us tonight, despite us not having funding, so I like that. That says something to me about their approach. I have, in the interest of full disclosure, worked with this firm in the past. So I know that when they present publicly, as they did, and say that their approach is about community engagement, it's about making everything available to people and making sure no stone is left unturned when it comes to budget and bringing citizens in, that is the truth. The owner's project manager, probably should have led with this, is a consultant that comes on. They function as the project manager for the owner. The owner of a project like this is the town. It's the town administration and select board, but it is ultimately you, the residents of Westwood, and it is the OPM's job to bring in independent construction, financial, architectural design expertise to make sure that the project is being designed, bid, and built to reflect only what the town needs, nothing more, nothing less. So a potential timeline, should this be approved Monday, we have a pre-feasibility going on now. We will engage in a rebidding of design services as well in May, have a project team complete in June, and we will begin the feasibility and schematic design proper throughout the summer. That will include public information sessions, community forums, really making sure that we are socializing the project, getting the options out there, and hearing from you along the way. Not with a kind of naive promise that if we do it this way, we're going to reach an end product where it's fast, cheap, easy, and every single person agrees on it. I wish that were possible. It's not. I think it's really important to level set with that. That does not mean that we can't show our work and do it in a way where hopefully, even if it's not the exact site that you personally feel is best, even if we all continue to, get vertigo when we look at public construction prices, which we will, right? That's real and that is happening and it's not going away, that people feel that it was run to ground and done publicly in a way that you have confidence in. If that goes well, you'll see the farther it goes, the more TBDs there are, the farther out you're forecasting, the less precise it becomes necessarily. Hopefully by fall or winter, we have a recommended site and schematic design with a project scope and budget that in either fall or early spring goes to a special town meeting for a vote on a new FS1 project and a debt exclusion ballot to get this right. Should say, there's a caveat that's looked bigger on my computer screen. This is an estimate. It is subject to change. Please do not come yell at me in the fall that I got this wrong. We're doing our best. So the key takeaways. The prior plan was rejected by voters, and the community has asked for alternatives. The FS1 Steering Committee has identified alternatives. Article 22 gives us the funding to do the professional, public, and inclusive work to get to a new project in a way that's fair and transparent. And it's the next necessary step in moving this project towards an outcome that the community can support. And as I said earlier, this is really just about getting the right building and the right site for the right price. I want to say thank you for all of you coming. Thank you for your time tonight, for your engagement on this project. Additional information and handouts are available in the back of the room. I believe there was a sign-up sheet going around. There's a QR code here that'll bring you to the website. westwoodma.gov/FS1 has every document that's informing the work of the steering committee as well as staff. The steering committee also has an email, fs1committee@westwoodma.gov. As Ford alluded to, these are your neighbors. They are doing this as volunteers. They want to do a good job for you. They will answer you, and they care about getting the right information to you. And we encourage you to stay informed, stay involved, and we hope to see all of you Monday night, May 4th. I'm going to take a seat, and we are here to take your questions now. There's a microphone over here. I don't know if it's on. Afraid. So if you would like to ask questions of us, we are here for you. And again, thank you so much.
Hi there, Bob Fernini, 133 Greenacre. I've got a question for the fire chief. Yeah, nice to meet you, sir. Can you give me the three, if you can group the type of calls you make on a calendar year basis? What's number one, what's number two, what's number three, and what percentage? I suspect paramedic calls are number one.
Correct.
Okay, what percentage would that be?
65%, I would say.
Okay, what about number two?
Number two would be fire alarm calls.
Okay.
whether- It's hard to kind of parse that out a little bit because that would include anything from a, trash barrel, or, well, it could be false alarms to a trash barrel fire or some sort of an alarm of fire, I guess I
Okay,
would
so
put it in a category.
65% for paramedic.
Yep.
2/3. What's number two is what percentage?
I would say another 20%,
So now we're at 85.
Yep.
What's three? Car accidents, maybe?
probably.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's kind of one of those things that falls into both categories is paramedic versus fire truck. There's a rescue aspect to a car crash versus if you have entrapment or things like that, you need advanced tools to kind of help those people
Sure.
out. So that would require fire response as well as paramedic response. So another category I would say would be calls for service such as like water leaks, gas calls, carbon monoxide
Yep.
calls,
Okay.
things like that. I would attribute that remaining 10% to that.
So did anyone ever consider making Fire Station 2 Fire Station number 1? And making the other off-site location a paramedic center? Maybe staff it with a fire truck? It's, to me, as a I'm a CPA, so I look at things differently than everybody else. To me, it seems like overkill. I take Franklin, Mass., double the population of Westwood, 2.5 times the land square miles. They've got 2 fire stations.
Right.
We have surrounding towns. We've got Canton, we've got Medfield, we've got Needham. I don't know if we do we do a joint venture. We help them, they pay us. They help us, we pay them. So I'm not adverse to a new building. We need it. Okay, I voted for the police station. We needed the police station. That building was antiquated.
Yep.
So if we looked at it from the standpoint, and I do hospital consulting, I've done a lot of the major paramedic in the state hospitals, et cetera, so I understand the business. If you looked at it from that aspect of a separate paramedic center, maybe you staff it with a fire truck, whatever. Maybe you build a new building, you renovate a building, you're still getting what you want. I mean, there are fires, but with all the technology today, my brother's a district chief in Boston. I know I see what goes on. Yeah. I'm not saying don't build another building. I'm saying if we look at it a little bit differently, the fire station in Islington's fine. I know it's a little bit out of the way, but if most of the calls are paramedic calls, maybe you have, I don't know, but maybe, consider that.
So there's a few things there, and I could keep you all night on a lot of these
Okay.
topics. But What I will say is Station 2, when it was initially designed and built, was built as a substation. So it's really designed to be a secondary station. There's 5 dormitories there, as well as kitchen and living space for the firefighters that work out of there. And then what you see when you look at that building is mainly the apparatus floor space. So it really does look a lot bigger than it is. I know you talked about Franklin and things like that too. I'm also aware of Franklin and neighboring departments as
Yeah.
well, and I won't speak for them, but I do happen to live out near the north side of Franklin too, where they don't have fire protection. I think they'll be looking to expand as well. We're simply looking to replace this station now because this is the side of the town that we've established as the majority of our calls coming from currently. In the future, we've also mentioned, Ford spoke earlier about the 8 options originally that we looked at. And in that process, we talked about a 3rd substation because we're also looking at the University Ave section as a area of town that has an increased amount of calls for service. So in the background, for a long time now, we've been trying to increase our staffing levels to a minimum of 11. That would allow us to permanently staff 2 full-time ambulances. And without getting too deep into the weeds and taking up all of your night explaining exactly what I'm trying to say to you is we use this station to cross-staff multiple vehicles. So that means if we send our first ambulance out, our second ambulance can then respond only at the behest of Engine 5, meaning we take Engine 5 out of service, take their crew, add them to our second ambulance. So that second ambulance is only available when Engine 5 is in service in quarters. So building a station with that type of versatility is really what we're trying to do over here, so we can continue to provide the services we provide with the staffing we currently have and the size of the building that we're looking for. Does that make sense? I know
Yeah.
it's very complicated.
Yeah.
Cross-staffing modeling is very
Yeah.
difficult to explain sometimes, and I'm doing the best I can in
Right,
a short
yeah.
period of time. So, yes.
And as a layperson looking at it, if 2/3 of the calls are paramedic and the other 15 are, car accidents, whatever,
Yep.
To me, you're going to have fires. That's a
Right.
fact of life. You could have lightning hit a house. I remember there was one on
Sure.
Gay Street back 15, 20 years ago.
Sure. Yep.
But if you looked at it from that aspect, and then you do have surrounding towns
Yes.
that we could call for backup if we needed them. And I'm not saying don't build another building.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, does it have to be all the accoutrements of a fire station number 1, since most of the calls are paramedic calls 2/3?
So I think that's what we've done in the past, and I think through the schematic and design process, I think that's another thing that we look at.
Yeah.
Our staffing models and the programming needs of the fire department going forward. So that's really what we're trying to establish tonight and through town meeting next week, is some of that schematic and design money can go towards taking a look at all of those options
Yeah.
again.
I appreciate it.
Does that make
Great
sense?
chatting with you. Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
I hope that answered your
Colin,
question.
Can I ask 2 follow-up questions?
Sure, please do.
If you didn't, is this on? If you didn't have an ambulance out of a location on this side of town and only had your ambulances coming out of the location of FS2, are you able to estimate for us how that would increase the response time to Fox Hill, Westwood Glen, Dover Street, those types of areas?
Yes. So the answer is, we look at 4 minutes as our minimum response time is what we try to achieve for all our ALS. So if we didn't have an ambulance on this side of town, go ahead.
ALS is
Oh, I'm sorry.
advanced life support.
Advanced life support. So we currently staff mostly all paramedics throughout our staff, they can do advanced techniques like start IVs, push medications, interpret EKGs. So we're at the highest pre-hospital advanced level you can have as a community. In moving our ambulances across town, we're delaying the response time to this side of town. So what we did in this temporary situation, I'll use this as an example.
But it would be out of the 4 minutes.
It would be out of the 4 minutes, if that's the short way to answer your question. Yeah. Moving our ambulances to the other side of town solely would be more than a 4-minute response time to places like Highland Glen, Fox Hill Village, et cetera.
And
What I'm getting at is you have a paramedic center on this side of town. Well, I'm not saying don't do that.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to have a paramedic center here, and you've got one on the other side along with the fire.
Right.
And whether you staff it also with a fire truck here,
Yep.
maybe.
Ultimately, in the future, if we were at our, if where we want it to be, we would have a staffed ambulance here and a staffed ambulance in Islington as well. That's where we're trying to get to. That's where we've been trying to get to for a few years now, and we're still going to work towards that as well into the future. But those types of things take time, and we understand that.
Can you tell us a little bit about the types of things that are in this main fire station location beyond the trucks and the firefighters that aren't at FS2 that need to be accommodated?
Yes. Now that we're under the temporary situation, it's a little difficult, but if we were operating normally out of Station 1 as we were previously, we would be cross-staffing several trucks here. So that would be our engine, which carries water to the fire. That's what our primary response vehicle for any fire call would be. Our ladder truck, which gets us to reach, and they do things like search and rescue, ventilation, extrication, or they have advanced tools that they can use to cut people out of motor vehicles, cut holes in roofs, things like that. And then we keep 2 ambulances here in the fire bay, as well as our shift commander, our shift commander is a deputy chief who is in charge of the entire shift and takes command and control of all of the calls that we do when they meet the level of need that requires him to respond. So, for example, a house fire in town, the deputy chief would be the one ultimately in charge of the scene until relieved by a senior officer. So he would drive an SUV-style vehicle. That would be out of here as well.
What about support staff and call center and things like that?
So support staff, and that's one of the things that we're also looking to replace that I often harp on and I'd like to communicate, is that not only are we trying to build a fire station, we're trying to build what I like to call a headquarters. Because we run currently 7 firefighters out of here and 3 out of Station 2, Islington. Those are our people that are primarily responsible for emergency responses. In addition to those 7 people that run out of this station, there are 5 administrative staff members, including myself. The chief of department, our EMS coordinator, our fire prevention and training deputy, and our office manager. So those are the 5 support staff and administrative members that also work out of the station. So it's not just a fire station. We need a fire station. We need a residential building because the firefighters that we staff here operationally actually live here 2 days a week. Think of it that way. So this isn't just their workplace, it's also their home 2 days out of every week. And then in addition to that, we need an office staff and an office space for our administrative staff. So I hope that kind of clears up what you were looking for.
Hi, Paula McLaughlin, 39 Hawthorne Street. I just want to, full disclosure, I supported the last one. I think it's really important that we have not only a place that, a fire station that can get to calls quickly, but also a place that's safe for our firefighters. My grandfather was a firefighter. He died of lung cancer. We had no idea in the 70s what these men were, it was mostly men, were going through. It's a dangerous and sometimes thankless job. I think it's easy for people to come up and say, like, oh, let's just do this, and you only need 1 ambulance here and 1 ambulance there. But Westwood Fire took my mother when she passed away to, they made several trips to my home. They had to take her from the house to the hospital. When that happens, that ambulance is out of commission for a while. You're not just ready to go to another place. And these guys are watching people die. It's not an easy job. I think it's the least we can do as a town is get out and vote. On Monday, participate in town meeting, ask questions if you have them. But it's not going to get cheaper if we keep pushing this down the road. I know 38 million seemed like a lot. I shudder to think what it's going to cost if this gets delayed another year or 2. I think we're going to be looking at 38 million and saying, geez, that was a bargain. So I want to thank you for what you do. I want to encourage everyone here to participate, get out, listen. There were lots of opportunities to ask questions the last couple times. And we want to continue to make sure that you all have a safe spot. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm David Russell, 23 Highview Street. I also want to thank you for being here, and especially the people who are volunteering their time. It's a great thing to do. I really appreciate it. Just a couple of clarifying questions. So, feasibility, schematic, two different reports. Sounds like the feasibility has already been, we've already hired Weston to do the feasibility, and we're waiting to, if we get the funding, to take bids on the schematic. Is that accurate?
No, and forgive me for not being clearer. So I'll look to the OPMs here that I think technically feasibility and schematic would be two discrete documents, but the article that we're proposing Monday night would be funding sufficient to do both. The work that we have Weston and Sampson doing now is pre-feasibility site work, where they are getting what our interest was at the end of February when the steering committee said these are the three sites we think we should look at. March and April, we didn't want to lose 2 months
Right.
of productive time. And so we tasked Weston and Sampson with doing some of that preliminary work that any feasibility, when you're doing a site analysis, would need to do. Setback analysis, wetland analysis. There had been a very high level, like kind of desktop review using state GIS data the last time, but not actually sending folks out to do wetland flagging and certifying where wetland lines are. So we sent them out to get to work doing that now. That will help get a really good kickstart on feasibility, but it doesn't get you all the way to having a project.
So can you say a little bit more about the $325,000? Is that an estimate? Do we take bids from different companies? Do we have providers that we already work with and trust and want to use again?
Sure, it's a great question. So the $325,000 is a budget estimate that is based, I believe, on previous feasibility studies that Westwood has done, as well as requests for kind of a quote from the former designer on what would the design component of that be again. And from there, we backed out an estimate for what an owner's project manager would cost. The last go around, the process had the design team, so the architects and the engineers on board before bringing in a project management firm. That doesn't mean it was right or wrong, but this time we're reversing that. That's what I have a good amount of experience doing in other communities, and I find to be helpful, particularly where cost is a concern. You bring the project managers on as far as folks you've worked with. Under state bidding law, typically you have to put those things out to a public bid. And so we had a really good response from the market for OPMs. We did go with a new firm, again, not to suggest that the prior one did something necessarily wrong. It's a perfectly valid firm, but I just think that the feeling of the folks on the design, the project management review team, felt that what the new firm, PMA, kind of led with, which is how to get projects back on track after they've failed, how to make sure that we're making residents have everything they need to make a decision that they feel comfortable with, kind of put them over the top. From there, if we get funding approved Monday night, we would then put out another competitive bid for design services. And former firms that have worked in Westwood are welcome to bid. You have to, it's an open process by law, and we will have to rank those based on the merits of those proposals.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you so
Great
much.
to see everybody out here. You know, people governing themselves. That's what this country's about.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Kathy Wallace, 283 Farm Lane. I've attended a lot of these meetings, and I know a lot about what goes on at Westwood Fire Department, and you just touched on it. There's so much more that goes into it that obviously would take more of this meeting. But what I have learned is, and I think it was one of the town staff said, you really build the building from the inside out. You start with what you need inside. And as a resident, I would like to see healthy firefighters, which means we need to have decontamination and appropriate hot and cold zones to keep them healthy. I would like to see physically fit firefighters when I'm calling, and I really hope I never have to call you. But if I do, I want to see them, they're healthy, they're physically fit, which means they should have a place to exercise. We're not talking about Lifetime Fitness here, we're talking about a wellness room, basically. They can't, like many people, go out to the gym at lunchtime because they need to be here next to their trucks at all times. I would like to see mentally stress-free firefighters that aren't suffering from PTSD. And a lot goes into that in terms of calming spaces within a station. Once again, the workout area can contribute to that because that helps some people deal with stress. I would like to see a very well-trained staff. So training for the fire department, and these are all things I've learned at meetings, is constant. It never ends. It's not as though you learn a skill, you take a test, you're certified, and you never do it again. I mean, you do medical training with medical doctors, you review cases that you've had to see, what could be done, what can you learn from things like that. And most importantly, I want to see them responding to my house in 4 to 5 minutes, because time is my health or my family member's health. So I really found that valuable when I heard the person say, build it from the inside out. And just back to the training, it's constant. They need space to do it. If they have to go out of town to do training, it costs money and takes their time. And we do have, they mentioned that there's 4 working groups that rotate on their shifts. We aim to have 11 in each of those working groups, but we have studies that actually say we should have 13 or 14, and we should have 11 at all times. Right now, we're only trying to still get to 11 staff, and we only have 9 at all times. And that can affect response time as well, making us need to rely on mutual aid. So if you need an ambulance to come to you because these guys are in Boston or out on other calls, you could be waiting 15 minutes for an ambulance. I'm not okay with that. So we should, if we're, excess capacity was something that was talked about with the last build, but where we should be today is building for 14 firefighters on staff. And finally, if you could just talk about national fire standards in terms of how many people in how many minutes are supposed to arrive to a fire.
So you're referring to the National Fire Protection Association numbers, which I'm aware of. But as far as a first alarm assignment on Fort, I believe you're supposed to have your first arriving company. I know is supposed to be there within 4 minutes. With additional companies, a full first alarm assignment, which would include 2 engines, a ladder, a shift commander, and an ambulance on scene. So that's 3, 6, 9, 12. So we run 3 firefighters per fire engine, I should say, 1 shift commander. So it's somewhere in the area between 15 and 20 firefighters should be assigned on a first alarm assignment. They should have to be there within 8 minutes, with the first initial companies arriving within 4. What you're referring to is that's the National Fire Protection Association's industry standard. NFPA for short is the association that basically governs what we do across the gamut of things that we do. They're the ones that tell us that we need the separation of contaminants. They're the ones that tell us what needs to be on what trucks. And they're the ones, that's the association that came up with those types of numbers. So we try to live up to those standards. Most we can achieve with what we have in-house.
But
So
that is why you need the people that you need and the equipment that you need.
That's correct.
And we had a recent very tragic example in Fall River where they didn't have,
That's
they
correct.
were not able to respond according to what standards were, and unfortunately there were many deaths as a result of that. So just because it doesn't get used every day doesn't mean we don't need it. We need it in case of emergency.
That's right.
Thank you.
And a lot of what will come out of schematic design is based on what the information we provide on what our staffing levels are and things like that, as I've said. So for us to get to that next level, our programmatic needs will all be identified within the next process. Correct me if I'm wrong.
That's correct. And I think to the assistant chief's point, it was a good question. It's a fair question about, are there different ways we could do business where we're working regionally, we're working with others, and the assistant chief just referenced 15 to 20 firefighters on a fire. We are not going to be, we don't have the financial capacity to have 20 firefighters on a shift. So even the way fire departments in Westwood and all around Massachusetts operate right now is exactly as the gentleman before asked, which is it is a team sport and it is a regional sport. Outside of really small calls, you're going to any real fire, correct me if I'm wrong, you're going to have your neighboring towns responding to help. And so it's really a question of where you're locating those pieces of equipment and that expertise within the fire department, whether it's a medical, whether it's a fire, so that somebody can get there and be first, but that's not usually remotely close to enough. This project is not a vehicle through which I think the department of a town are trying to get to 20 firefighters on a shift. And that's why it's so important that you have at least that tip of the spear capacity to get people where they need to be in a reasonable time, so that as those regional assets are coming in to help and keep each other safe, that you're doing the best you can.
Hey, Steve Drew, 12 Beechnut Road. You mentioned, was it, I didn't catch the name, Sampson? They're doing the
Weston and Sampson.
Right. How are they getting paid now? Is that part of the 325 or?
That's a great question. So the select board, through the budget that is authorized by town meeting every year, maintains a reserve account that they can transfer funds through a vote at a public meeting. And when the FS1 steering committee came with this recommendation, worked with staff and requested of the select board a transfer of unused reserve funds that they had access to start that process now. So
that's exclusive of the 325?
Correct. That's funded.
So how much is that?
The request from the select board was for a $75,000 allocation that can be used broadly for site preparedness analysis, public outreach, and related pre-feasibility work for FS1 and other municipal facilities, because obviously one of the things that came up last time was concern with folks about school projects that are in the way, other municipal buildings. So we wanted to have access to something that was flexible enough that we could get this started and have the ability to do things like send mailers and educate folks of when these sessions were. The work by Weston and Sampson, I don't have it in front of me. I believe it was in the area of 16,500.
Okay, not the full 75. Second question, what is this place worth right here?
Price of the land.
Well, it's a reasonable question. If you're looking off-site,
Sure.
what is going to happen with this site?
Okay, so you're talking about in the future if this is not where it's built.
If it's not going here, yeah, is this going to be sold and use the proceeds? And what's it worth?
So that's a great question. In my prior community, we did do this, where we consolidated a variety of schools and then sold the vacant ones.
Mm-hmm.
And we would need to come back to town meeting to get voters' approval. Even if a building is no longer being used, you need voters to approve and basically grant permission to the select board to list a property, because it's your property, right? It's the public's property. Town meeting would need to vote and say, yes, you can put it on the market. When you're doing what's called a disposal of public property, even if it's vacant, typically, I'm not sure if it's mandated by law, but if it's not, it's a really smart thing to do. Is you much like with a house, you would pay an appraiser to come and do a professional appraisal of the property that you would include in the listing. So I don't know exactly what this site would be worth, but if that is where we went, we would need to get it professionally appraised, and we would need to disclose that information. The public would have access to that.
Well, I think if you're moving off-site, spending money you don't have, you've got an asset,
Sure.
liquidate and use
It certainly could be, and that is something I believe, and Ford and Jody can speak to this. This was one of the unique pieces of this site is that potential for constructive and adaptive reuse, right? Could this be repurposed into something, whether it's residential, commercial, some type of use that gets it on the tax rolls, paying taxes and productive for the town? That's certainly an option, and for Jody, you folks spoke about it.
Let me just jump in. I don't have a number for you, but if we used another site, Deerfield or behind Starbucks, and that was going to be the site that we're going to do it, number one, we would have to procure land so we can get direct access. So that's going to cost money. That's one of the factors we have to think about. The other one is we wouldn't have to move from here while we were doing construction over there. If we do construction here, we're going to have to move operations to another location, so that's going to cost money. If we're not going to use this property, and because we're going to build in another location, yes, then the town, the voters for the town would have the option of maybe perhaps selling it. So how much that's all going to cost? That's part of the work that we're going to be doing if we select a property other than this. Then we'll do that kind of analysis, so we will have a guesstimate of exactly what the net cost is going to be to the town.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Angela McCall, 26 Deerfield Ave, Westwood. I just have two questions. On that pre-study, do you know when you might have some information to be able to release to the public about the wetlands and the permitting, especially for the Deerfield?
Yes.
Then, and before
sorry.
you answer, in part two, on the steering committee, did you ever get the pulse survey results? I know we all, you put that on your website, we took a vote, but I don't see any, I haven't found any results of the pulse survey.
Oh, the survey? No, the survey is out there, and I believe it's going to be released, and Molly might be able to help me, but I believe it's going to be released the next couple of weeks.
Oh, this is after town vote or before?
I believe after.
Oh, okay. And then I'll let you answer. I'll sit down.
As far as the wetland question, yes, they have flagged, as you might see colorful flags out there. They've already done the flagging. They're finalizing the report, but they're kind of high-level estimate right now before they finalize that report, which I expect within a week, is that both of those sites are buildable and that wetlands are not a factor that would make them unbuildable.
And will you release that on town? Will that be on the town website?
Yes. Yep.
And then, do they do any permitting?
No, we wouldn't get into permitting. So what they'll be doing, the report will show the site maps. It'll show the state GIS. That's the Massachusetts Geographic Information System, where they estimate where wetlands are. But it will also show where they physically went out, observed, and flagged wetlands. What the buffer zones, the space away from those under the town's bylaws and the State Wetland Protection Act are. And we'll also include a kind of zoning memo analyzing what are the setbacks from the property, at the edges of that property, what type of permitting may be required, right? This site, one of the major challenges with this site is how small it is, and last go around having to go through the Zoning Board of Appeal variance process, so Weston and Sampson was asked to take a first look at that as well. And yes, we will publish all of it. If they have the wetland report ready to publish, we will. I don't know if it will be, but I am telling you, and will probably, I'm sure I'll be asked May 4th, that their analysis is that those sites are both buildable and that wetlands are not a factor that would make them unfeasible for building. Thank you.
My name is Mike Greenway, 44 Spruce Drive. I think it might encourage people in the way they vote if they knew how much % increase there would be on their taxes for this project. Because we hear all the advantages, and if it was something like a few $100s a year, well, fine, people would vote for it. I'm very fortunate living in Westwood, but boy, the taxes. So how much % increase would it be on regular homeowners for their taxes?
So, a couple of things. The last time when it did go to the ballot box, that information was known. I believe it was 365 approximately per year. doing this again, we can't back out a tax impact until we have a project budget, which we can't get until we do feasibility and schematic. So what's being requested Monday night is funding to get to that point. That will not raise taxes. That's out of available free cash, which is funding that's not allocated for current use. But part of this would be looking at project costs and what that would mean as far as a tax impact.
Yes, I mean, if people knew it was 350, maybe 400, that might seem just like, okay, that's, compared to the rest of the taxes, that's not a lot. And for the benefits,
I
it sounds
appreciate
like it would be worth it. And that might encourage people, rather than knowing all the details of the plans and everything else, which is wonderful, might encourage them to say, okay, I'm going to vote for it. So could that be brought up at the town meeting on the 4th, so that people would know it's not going to be this huge amount? I mean, we just had a really big increase in our taxes.
So we can't Monday know what the new project tax impact would be because we don't have the project yet.
But you could bracket it. You could say it's going to be in this range.
We could try. I would be hesitant to do so just because it's it would be speculating at that point. But I can tell you that last time that was anytime you go to a debt exclusion before you ask people to vote, it is important for the town, and I'm agreeing with you, to socialize and make very clear what the cost is and what it's not.
I mean, you mentioned the number was 350. I might have voted differently if I'd known that.
Understood.
But it was 350, and I'm sure I know it was published to the taxpayers, so they knew going into that vote how much it would cost the average homeowner. And I'm sure, and I don't recall if I've seen it, usually they show what it'll cost the average homeowner, but then they give various rates and how with the value of your property. So if you have an inexpensive property, it's going to cost less, more. So I assume that was very well broadcasted out, but I could be wrong.
I must have looked in the wrong place because I didn't know that.
Your point is well taken.
Yeah, and that's part of this goal is we have to do a better job of getting the facts out there and educating this time.
And I promise you, when we get to that stage, you will know.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Margaret Driscoll, 47 Deerfield Ave. I have a process question. So when we're in town meeting in the vote, it's simply to vote yes or no on putting the money aside to do the feasibility study, correct?
Yes.
Then the next step is it comes back and through a series of meetings, forums, the criteria that you've established, the 3 options are ranked and evaluated. And with input from lots of people, it's the FS1 steering committee that comes back with the recommendation. That recommendation then goes to, hopefully, due to pricing, a fall special town meeting to fund or not fund what you've recommended, correct?
Well, it goes from the FS1 through the select board,
Through the select board. And then
onto the warrant, and then to the voters.
So the select board has a fairly significant say in.
100%, yes. I mean,
Okay.
we really appreciate the work the FS1 steering committee is doing, but just as a pure legal and statutory matter, the select board at the end of the day are
So
ultimately
select board, then the
responsible
select
for the
board
property of
brings
the
us
town.
into a special town meeting, and then at that point, to the point, we're going to know what the tax impact is. We're going to know the preferred location. We're going to know the design, the built from the inside, that it's hitting all the markers, and then it's thumbs up or thumbs down. And the thumbs up, we go ahead and fund it, which will probably increase our taxes. Or we really don't have a thumbs down option, I would assume, unless we'd like to leave the fire trucks on the underneath the tent.
Well, you always have a thumbs down option. Right.
Right, you always have, not always a good one.
Right,
But that is the process, those are the 4
That's
steps.
that was a pretty good summary.
Okay, so Monday we have a pretty straightforward decision. we fund the feasibility study or not. Then we want to all come back again frequently to make sure we have input into which of the three are being put forward to the selectmen, and then we need to canvass our selectmen. And then the final step is that education around cost, the cost of a civilization is tax, and that may be, we will see a tax increase, but we will get the fire station we need. So 4 steps quickly in a row and as fast as we can do it so that we get ahead of these building costs. Okay, clear what we need to focus on Monday. Thank you.
Are you coming Monday?
I think I will.
Thank you.
Connor, and is it correct that the vote on Monday at the town meeting is just to allocate money that's already in the town budget to pay for this feasibility study? It's not new money, it's money that's already in the budget that's just not allocated yet.
I think from a technical perspective, it's money the town is in possession of. It's not allocated out for any purpose right now. So it technically, free cash is basically, it's like retained earnings for a business. It's either revenue that came in stronger than we forecasted when we built the operating budget, or it is expense funds for our departments that they really ran a tight ship and they turned funding back at the end of the year. That's what free cash is, and that's where this funding would come from. It is not at the expense of any other operating need. We're not kind of pulling out of a fire department staff to pay for it or school operations. It is it's the ideal use. It's a non-recurring revenue that needs to go ideally to a constructive place that the public supports, and this is what that is.
So taking money from our savings account.
It's kind of like extra money in your checking account, because we have a savings account that's separate. That's a stabilization fund. I'm not trying to split hairs here, but municipal finance is my thing. So it's like you reach the end of the month and you're like, oh, this is more than I thought that would be there. But, so you find a constructive use. Maybe you repair something in your house that you were putting off, right? Or a fire station.
Kevin McCabe, 162 Stanford. At the special town meeting to authorize the design and bid for the last FS1, the town stated that the same sites had been considered and this was determined the most feasible. So what new information or different processes likely to or may change that conclusion this time around? And secondly, that meeting authorized either $3.2 or $3.6 million for a number of items, including the temporary relocation. What remains of that budget, and is it still available to the town as we go forward with whatever happens with FS1?
Thank you. I just want to, I think, clarify that the funding for design development, I don't believe included temporary ops. I think the temporary operations was baked into the $38 million ask that then failed at the polls, so that wasn't allocated. But the design funding was approved, and I think, most appropriate for me to turn to the FS1 steering committee of, in the aftermath of that failing, they were tasked by the board to basically bring fresh eyes to the prior process that had said this was where it should go. So for Jody, what?
No, that's exactly correct. They formed us to really start all over again. We were given no funding, incidentally. So that's what we did. We have analyzed, we looked at 3 spots right now. We don't have any others. We're going to look at those. And to answer a question that was earlier, we may not even get to be looking at 3, because remember, it's not only is the site buildable, do we have access to High Street, and that's key. If we don't get access to High Street, then some of those sites might not be viable at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We were told that the last time around, the analysis that was done on other sites was very top level. So the stuff that we're looking to do at these other sites, for whatever reason, they chose not to do. They just made a decision that they wanted the fire station built here without doing the analysis that we're asking to do on these feasibility studies at those other locations.
It's getting cold in here. How are we doing?
Would anybody like to get brought around the building? Okay. So perhaps what we could do. Oh, sorry. I wish. No, I was asking if anybody would like to be brought around to see the rest of the station, if you have not yet. Okay, fair enough. So what we can do, just mindful of time and that it's getting cold, we have members of the fire department here. Colin, where do you want folks to line up?
Right here is fine.
So if you would like to see the station for yourself and ask questions of the firefighters, what is it like working and living here, come over to this door. They'll bring you through. If you have more questions about what we presented in a process. Sure.
Complaints that you get from the firefighters that work here, what they want. Is that the, no, what they want?
I'm sorry, say it one more
All
time.
the firefighters that work in this building,
Yeah.
what do they want? Microphone?
Go ahead.
I don't need a microphone. What do the firefighters want in the building, the new existing building that you're making? What do they want?
In a nutshell, they want a safe environment to work in. We're free from contamination and cross-contamination that allows us to provide the best possible service we can to the people of the community. That's really what, that would be the overarching area. Of course, I could get deeper and get into more detail on it, but that's overall what I think they would say. And they're hanging around here. I encourage you to go ask them as well. Yeah.
I want a safe environment.
Yeah.
I want a clean environment, and I want an educational environment. I think that the educational component of the fire station, if I'm not correct, they need to have their training here. It needs to be available to them.
Sure.
They're available, and they have it through right on point. I hate to say how many times they come to my house, and they didn't have to be there. My Apple Watch goes off, the phone, laugh, it's not funny.
No, it's not.
CO2 goes off.
Yep. Yeah.
Some of the reasons why they're coming, they shouldn't be coming. My Apple Watch says I've fallen. By code, they have to come to my house.
Correct.
I'm standing there, I'm alive, I'm fine, okay?
Yep.
The other reason they came to my house numerous times, because my CO2 kept going off.
That's right.
And what was CO? CO went off, sorry.
I know what you meant.
And it was unnecessary. I know as a first responder, and I know as running being on ambulance for the Red Cross for many, many years in Framingham, which is a large town. I've lived here since 1951, and I respect everything that's going on in this town.
Yep.
I want a new fire station. I want to have the facilities updated. This is not acceptable. You know, this is just not acceptable. But I don't want it to lag. I think it's lagging too long. There's so many in-between steps here.
Yep.
And it needs to be explained, as she mentioned and other people have mentioned on Deerfield Ave and everything. I want to know where the best location is right now. Right now, where is it? What is it that the firefighters want that are working here? What do the people want? I live here. I'm paying taxes. My taxes are going to go up again and again. And not only that, but another component that hasn't been spoken about, I don't think, but I couldn't hear very well, is not only that, but your insurance will go up depending on how far your fire station is from you. How far is the fire hydrant? How far are the fire stations?
That's right.
Your insurance goes up. So these are some things that I want answered. But most importantly, the people standing around, the firefighters standing around, the first responders or anybody, they need a better space. But this is ridiculous that it's taking so long. It's got to be fast-tracked somehow, and I don't know how. But when somebody has a heart attack, you don't say, oh, gee, what am I supposed to do? Let me get the manual. There is a manual. There's a formula. Franklin, I think, was brought up. Other stations have been brought up. They've all done this. It's not new. And I'm hopeful that on Monday that there are a lot of very, very important questions asked. The one about taxes is extremely important for a lot of people here. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Speak to the blue tarp that's over in the corner as far as what the firefighters would like in the station?
Sure. The blue top remains up there as an attempt because there's been an ongoing leak for a number of years that we've tried to prevent from. The room that you see underneath the blue top is considered our clean room. That's our version of the decontamination area where we clean our masks and our equipment as well as our laundry. That's not how we would do it today. The laundry for our uniforms and our bedding and all our towels and such would be done inside the clean space or the living space, if you will. And that's what we're trying to kind of set up. But the tarp is specifically there to prevent water from dripping into our clean space. Oh, you're welcome. These gentlemen here are happy to answer any more questions that you'd like specific to what they do around here, what they're looking for in a new fire station. We're happy to show you around. So by all means.
Thank you. And thank you all for coming. So if you want to line up with the firefighters, they'll bring you around. I think that's kind of concludes our formal panel, given we're all walking around now. There's handouts here, reminders for town meetings. Really appreciate all of you coming. We will hang around if there are additional questions you have. And again, thank you so much.